These are examples for classwork 2-6. Number 1 says f of x is translated up 6 to give g of x. Write g of x in slope-intercept form. Our f of x equation is negative 2x minus 3. As you'll remember, slope-intercept form is f of x equals mx plus b. Okay, so that's the form that they wanted in. Whenever we have a translation that's a vertical shift, that would be f of x goes to f of x plus k. When k is greater than 0, that indicates that we're moving up. Okay, this is a vertical shift. Of k units. So we have our f of x is negative 2x minus 3. Then we're going to add our k value, which k is 6. Okay, so we have negative 2x minus 3 plus 6. When we combine like terms, we get that g of x now equals negative 2x plus 3. So right here I have negative 2x plus 3. For number 2, it says f of x is translated right 7 to give g of x. Write g of x in slope-intercept form. Our f of x equation is 3x plus 6. When we have a horizontal shift, of h units, we can notate it f of x becomes f of x minus h units. Okay, whenever h is greater than 0, that means we move to the right. Whenever h is less than 0, we're going to be moving to the left. So it says that we're moving to the right, which means 7 is a positive number. So we know it's positive 7. So our g of x becomes 3, and then instead of x, we're doing x minus our h value, so x minus 7, and still plus 6. We're going to distribute this 3 to each item inside the parentheses. So 3 times x is 3x, 3 times negative 7 is negative 21, plus 6. So I have 3x minus 15. So this here is 3x minus 15. For number 3, f of x is stretched vertically by a factor of 4 to give g of x. Write g of x in slope-intercept form. Okay, so when we have a vertical stretch, we have f of x becomes a times f of x. Okay, a is the value that we're going to be multiplying by. Whenever a is greater than 1, that indicates that it's a stretch. If a were between 0, the absolute value of a were between 0 and 1, then we would have a compression. So we have our g of x is going to equal our a value, which is 4 in this case. So we have 4 times f of x, which is 4x minus 5. Okay, 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Okay, so my answer is g of x equals 16x minus 20. For number 4, f of x is compressed vertically by a factor of 1/4 to give g of x. Okay, so again, let me write out. We have f of x becomes a times f of x. Okay, of course, when a was greater than 1, we had our stretch. When a is between, the absolute value of a is between 0 and 1, we have our compression. Okay. So our g of x is going to equal 1/4 times 20x plus 28. Okay, so 1/4 times 20 is 20 over 4, which simplifies to 5x. 1/4 times 28 is 28 over 4, which is 7. Okay, so my answer is going to be 5x plus 7. Number 5, f of x is compressed horizontally by a factor of 1/4 to give g of x. We're going to write g of x in slope-intercept form. So if we have f of x, it becomes f of 1 over b x. Okay, that b value is what we are using to either stretch or compress. So if b is greater than 1, it's a stretch. If b is between, absolute value of b is between 0 and 1, then we have our compression. Okay, so in this case, g of x is going to equal 1 over our b value. So in this case, b equals 1/4. Okay, so 1 over 1/4. And that's being multiplied by x. All this is in parentheses. And it's negative because we have negative x. So instead of x, it's now 1 over 1/4 x, still plus 6. Okay, 1 times divided by 1/4, so 1 divided by 1/4 is the same thing as saying 1 times 4 over 1. Remember, we flip and multiply. So that gives us 4. So g of x equals negative, now we have 4x plus b, or sorry, plus 6. So that means it equals negative 4x plus 6. Number 6 is stretched horizontally by a factor of 2 to give g of x. So we have f of x goes to f of 1 over b x. Okay, and since this value is greater than 1, when b is greater than 1, That's our stretch. Okay, so our g of x is going to equal -2. Now instead of x, we're going to write 1 over b, so our b value equals 2. So 1 over 2x minus 2, which then equals -2 times 1/2 is -1, so negative x. It's assumed that there's a 1 there, minus 2. So our answer here is -x minus 2. For number 7, f of x is is reflected across the x-axis to give g of x. Okay, so our g of x is going to equal, whenever we have a reflection, f of x goes to negative f of x. Okay, if this is reflected across the x-axis. Okay, so when we reflect across the x-axis, it's f of x becomes negative f of x. So that just means negative f of x, which is x plus 2, which equals, distribute the negative, so we've got negative x and negative 2. So negative x and negative 2. For number 8, f of x is reflected across the y-axis. So f of x becomes f of negative x. Notice the difference, before it was on the outside, now it's inside with the x. So f of x becomes f of negative x whenever we reflect across the y-axis. Okay, so g of x then equals 5 times negative x instead of regular x minus 9. Notice x becomes negative x, so x becomes negative x. Okay, so that means we have negative 5x minus 9. That completes each sample question for classwork 2-6. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me, take a look at the Holt online textbook, or look in the digital locker for additional notes.